Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello. I bring you greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'll introduce myself a little further shortly. Just now, I offer you an overview underpinning the thinking behind tonight's webinar. We will explore why children build lifelong learning identities when they have the time, freedom, and space to take on risky, challenging provocations in our environments. As early learning settings enable children to engage in risk and assessment of that risk, they build children's confidence to tackle difficult, challenging experiences and to do this safely. Thrilling, often surprising and uncertain adventurous play provides children with an avenue to not only feel those butterflies in their tummies, but to test ideas, reflect, assess, and try again, to be reflective, to make mistakes and bounce back with resilience, to struggle through difficulty, and to problem solve, thereby strengthening their resourcefulness. And my very favourite, to grow a deep sense of camaraderie in the face of challenge, and thus building relational reciprocity, where we thrive on being interdependent, working as a team, and caring deeply for other people, the flora and fauna, and the health of our planet. I so admire and value Te Ao Māori greetings, and these traditionally begin with sharing the places and the people who are important to us. Nature is a deeply connected part of this process. Māori whakapapa back to these mountains and rivers. As a Pākehā New Zealand, I cannot do this, but I can recognise Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the treaty that enables me to stand in this place and think of the mountain that speaks to my heart. I know many of you will feel connected to your own mountains. One reason is because mountains project a majestic presence that inspire awe and wonder. And I think this is what learning ought to be like, full of heart, energized intent. When we intentionally design environments for learning, it is the environment that we shape that enables children to explore and answer the questions that are important to them, or not. Ko Mauao te Mona, te rune taku na ko. Mauao is the mountain that speaks to my heart. The other great natural phenomena that is shared is the river that connects you to place and people. Rivers have the capacity to soothe as they meander along. They also have the ability to excite, as anyone rafting in a grade 5 rapid will be able to tell you. And learning is a lot like this, sometimes smooth and comfortable, and at other times adventurous and invigorating, scary, and yet full of feelings of accomplishment. Ko Wairoa te awa, mahi nei ako maharahara. Wairoa is the river that alleviates my worries. Nor Tauranga aho. I'm from Tauranga on the east coast, around 2 hours south of Auckland in the Bay of Plenty. Māori as tangata whenua, the people of this land, use the word whānau when talking about family, and the addition of the word kaupapa adds the dimension we might think of as a community of learners with values and work ethics that bind us together in ways that can be described as connections that mirror familial ties. Hence why we include these important people communications in our greetings. Surely this is what being in a team ought to feel like, a shared responsibility for one another and a feeling that we have each other's backs, supported, affirmed, and yet stretched. Ko Greaton Early Learning Centre Te Kaupapa Whānau, ko Educational Leadership Project Te Kaupapa Whānau. I've worked with and alongside the people in these organisations for in excess of 20 years, and they mean a great deal to me. In terms of shared growth, we have been listening to each other, stretching each other's learning, all the while striving to be our wisest possible selves. You'll all have people like this in your lives to be treasured, to be supported, and to make that difference together that comes from collaborative endeavour through a shared purpose. And I recognise the ancestral and spiritual landmarks of Tauranga where I live, e mihi ana, ki ngā tohu o Nehe, or Ngāti Ranganui, or Ngāti Rangi, or Ngāti Pūkena, e noho nei o, ko Lorraine Sands Takawingawa. The photos in this slide, and many thereafter, show children from our learning, teaching and research setting at Greaton Early Learning Centre, climbing our much-loved local mountain, Mauao. This place has long been very special to me for many reasons, and one important one is as a metaphor for a philosophy of learning. I think really understanding what it is we value as learners and teachers and dreaming those big inspirational, aspirational dreams projects a pathway forward to ensure we make valued learning visible and reach the goals we set for ourselves, particularly as a connected community caring for each other. In effect, we look at that mountain from afar in its totality and consider the big vision. You might like to pause for a moment and think about what your vision for learning and teaching is and how you work together as a committed team to make this vision a reality. It helps us too to position ourselves inside our learning communities and build mutually beneficial pathways together. This means nurturing relationships through up close and personal connections. For here in connection is the place that truly gives us insight into whether our learning spaces are ones that enable us all to thrive as lifelong learners. This takes the hard effort, the work involved in climbing that metaphorical mountain in an up close and personal way. To do this, we cannot just be observers. We must be invested learners with and alongside our children and families. For unless our colleagues and our families understand the value of risky play, embedded not just inside our settings but in the natural world too, there will be pushback. So on this slide, this question, how might a commitment to engage in curriculum suffused with rich risk opportunities promote resilience, resourcefulness, thoughtful risk assessment, and interdependent social learning to nurture children as confident, capable learners? This kind of question would really drive our team to come together and build a shared understanding of what this might mean in practice. Let's jump straight into the lived experience of an adventurous learner. This learning story was written for Isla by Molly. In this instance, Isla, sitting at the top of a platform constructed by children and teachers, was calling to her brother with some very wise words. Think like a light bulb. You can do it, Koe, you can do it. I believe in you. You're a genius, Isla shouts. I smiled and was taken back to a time when Annabelle was the tuakana. Tuakana is a Māori word explaining about a more experienced learner who was helping a younger child. High up in the ropes, saying the same thing to Isla. Think like a light bulb, Koe. Think like a light bulb, Isla shouts. What does think like a light bulb mean, Isla? I ask. All of the things inside a light bulb, Isla replies. What's inside a light bulb? It's all of the good ideas inside your brain that will help you to get up, Isla replies. With this, Cohen continues to maneuver his body and stretch his mind to the limit. This second part of the learning story analyzes the learning. My thoughts on your learning. Isla, wow, my friend, what an incredible learner and tuakana you are. As I watched you today, I could see that you know just how incredibly capable and competent you are. You know of the innate potential that you have deeply rooted inside of you and can see the potential that others have inside of them. Isla, as you have spent time with Annabelle navigating the ropes and with the farm forest adventures tucked away in your heart, it is clear to see that you know that it takes practice, perseverance, effort, and resilience to achieve your learning goals. Molly continues analysing the learning for Isla. In July, when I wrote the story for you, E hara takutoa I te toho takitahi, he toa takitini, Annabelle was the one who was cheering you on. And with her encouragement, she empowered you to stretch yourself further, to explore and take risks. Today, you were the one who was lighting the way for Cohen. The language of learning that you used here was so rich and so fabulous. I stood in awe and had to simply just let the magic unfold. The third part of the learning story considers how we might all be able to stretch and nurture this learning further. Isla, you are an expert at many things, and your kete, that's a learning basket, is full of knowledge and wonderful skills. As you continue to play freely with your friends, set goals, and tackle them with your whole heart, mind, and soul, this will provide a platform for others to watch and stretch themselves even further. As Isla continues to remind others to think like a light bulb, I know that she will continue to empower our Taina, that's our younger, less experienced children, to take up new challenges, wiring and harnessing powerful learning brains. Now, are children able to experience unhurried, agentic learning environments every day when they go to their early learning settings? I suggest you look around your own setting and consider the images you see, because this is the place where you can make changes. Is your community a learning space immersed in nature? Do rhythms and rituals unfold in unhurried ways? Are these centered on building connections rather than completing a task? Is assessment formative, offering feedback to children and families that enable learning to be stretched further? Is there a sense of partnership, participation, and protection? Is it a place where there is stability, where teachers want to stay because they too feel a sense of satisfaction for the work they do with and alongside children, families, and their colleagues? Is it a place where the languages, cultures, and identities of children, families, and teachers are valued, visible, and validated? With the view that children ought to be designers of their own learning, we think about possibilities offered in environments that start first with relationships and a sense of belonging and well-being, enabling everyone to go beyond their comfort zones into complex play and adventurous learning. This learning relies on a growing sense of fair-mindedness, on care and kindness to stretch learning to the edge and beyond with and alongside their friends, and teachers who enable this to happen or not. Before we start thinking further about risky play, there's a great deal of conversation that happens within a team about values, about how we think we set up a potentiating environment, meaning the most conducive setting for children's learning. We develop a shared understanding of what we do, how we speak with children, and the kinds of learning conversations we have together throughout a learning day. And we go into more detail throughout the rest of this webinar. So, we want our children to experience elements of surprise and wonderment in our space and beyond. Our intention is to provoke children's curiosity, allow them to feel a sense of ambiguity and awe in their surroundings. And you can see much of this will have to do with the kinds of resources available to children. Loose parts, including stones and logs, water, anything really, and in bulk that children can manipulate themselves, have an idea about what they want to do, and carry it through. Essentially, we work to create spaces that are rich with possibilities, where questions are asked and explored, and where risks are taken. If we want to encourage flexibility of the mind, we must therefore provide a flexible environment. But let's go back in history for a moment, back to Europe after World War II, and look at what adventurous playgrounds looked like then. Risky playgrounds, in fact. Perhaps a reframing from using the word risky to adventurous shifts mindsets into a positive frame. Perhaps. But without risk, where is resilience able to thrive? Where is resourcefulness able to nurture creativity and imaginative solutions to our problems? It's salient to think about where you were able to roam as a child, where your parents roamed, and where your grandparents were able to roam. Words frequently used in Aotearoa homes were go outside and play. Children were not scrutinized all day. Some children today are barely able to be in the next room without an anxious parent worrying that they are safe. Now, the world is very different, but not different as in someone seemingly at every corner waiting to snatch a child. No, we have to worry more about the abuse that happens in children's homes. Traffic, though, is a current issue, and so is the lack of knowing our neighbours. However, this makes more importance then, more urgency to enable children to experience safe spaces for risky play and to be in nature. Lady Ellen of Hurtwood was very influential in the post war playgrounds. She said, an engineer designing a kettle will worry at the problem until it pours right. It is true that children are more complicated than kettles, and there is no absolute way to prove the social and psychological value of playgrounds. But my approach has been to try anything that has a germ of interest. If it works, splendid. If it falls, scrap it and try something else. And you can see from these photos the kinds of extreme, well, what we would call today, I think, extreme risky play. And yet, how many children were injured? How many children failed to thrive? And how much of the connected uh, wonderful relational learning happened in these places as children became explorers, as children became inventors, as children became collaborative workers in action. But are these kinds of playgrounds an answer? Static, racy, noisy, overstimulating? And why not add unlimited access to phones and computer games while we're about interfering with children's play? We wonder why anxiety is such a factor in the way children respond to new situations or are risk averse or take too many risks. Some of you, many even, may well have visited Aotearoa, and one of the reasons people come here is for adventure. Ancient for us are our mountains, rivers, forests, and oceans, and we love going into these environments to tramp, to ski, to swim and surf, among many other reasons, to be out in nature. And yet, many of us, and maybe you too, have captured our children in silos, rarely venturing outside of the safety of our gates and high fences. We've trapped children into structured, regimented timeframes in a spurious effort to get children ready for school. We have organised children around tasks to be done, to change nappies, to feed children, to put them to sleep, and we have changed free range play into organised, time bound moments throughout the day. We have regimented these to the point where children may well ask the questions Professor Margaret Carr posed many years ago now, from a child's perspective. Do you know me? Can I trust you? Do you let me fly? Do you hear me? Is this place fair for me? I so hope you are all saying, not us, not me. And I will say, not us at Greerton and not me. We have found ways to push back regimentation, schoolification, and structure. We have prioritised children's play, and we have done this by placing children's well-being first and bringing colleagues and families along with us. And we have done this within all the regulations and external audits that we all face. Tonight I'm drawing on the contributions of children, families and colleagues from my home setting at Greerton Early Learning Centre. My master's thesis explored the ways learning stories enabled children's lived experiences to be revisited, retold and reimagined, and how we nurture children's learning identities as lifelong learners. In Aotearoa and so many places around the world, learning stories gave us a tangible way to deepen our understanding of children we cared deeply about. In next month's webinar, Wendy Lee, my friend and colleague, will look at these in much more detail than I will tonight. Here, I want to emphasise the way learning stories thoughtfully shared within our learning community were able to talk about the values we hold for our learners and for ourselves. At Greerton, we considered the importance of taking a dynamic approach. This simply means that we are alert to dispositions and working theories as being verbs that we look for inside children's lived experiences within our community, and to think too about how these habits of learning are connected to children's family and social experiences. This enables us to meaningfully, way beyond a surface level, through relationships and conversations, track children's learning progress and consider ways our whole community might strengthen each child's learning further. This happens in mana enhancing ways, mana being a Māori word that is difficult to translate. It is about a person's prestige, authority, control, power, influence, status, charisma, spirituality, and an inner sense of our identity. Mana has a spiritual essence to it. Maybe in English, a sense of ourselves as worthwhile, as valued and respected. It is an interconnection, a wholeness between our heads, hearts, and bodies. Upholding a person's mana helps us in Aotearoa to think very deeply about our connections with children and ways we relate. It is about supporting powerful learners with and alongside each other. After all, if we talk to our good friends with raised voices, pointing our index finger and directing friends to go there, do that, stand up straight or cross their legs, we possibly wouldn't be friends for too much longer. Learning and teaching, I think, is a full commitment to children's agency as asked of us by our curriculum in Aotearoa Te Whāriki, and more specifically through the principles and strands of Te Whāriki. While Te Whāriki may have been the first sociocultural curriculum, many countries have similar curricula valuing respectful, responsive and reciprocal relationships. Agency means enabling children to drive their own learning within a vibrant setting designed for curiosity, possibility thinking, creativity, camaraderie, and empathy, and then to enable children's working theories to unfold without time constraints. And this is the crux. Because if we want children to engage fully in learning, then they need the time to become fully invested. I heard a very young children a child, just a few days ago, while doing her very best to climb monkey bars, say, "I'm practicing, and I'm never, never, ever going to give up." This only happens when teachers use this kind of language too. That was a tricky goal. I can see how it was difficult, but you found a way. You didn't give up and you practiced till you got there. That's so awesome. It means that teachers are reflective about what they are intentionally trying to model, have conversations about, and then write learning stories that focus on this active learner. Unpacking this to really understand what wise learning and teaching looks like is an incredibly important focus for us all. Using learning story narrative assessments to do this removes us from an objective space. For objectivity is not possible, or even if it was, it is not desirable when being in connection is our driving motivation. The chart on this slide shows the strands of Te Whāriki in both Te Reo Māori and English and moves across to the dispositions that support, for example, a sense of belonging. A learner needs courage and curiosity to enable them to take an interest. They will do this if the environment is interesting and they feel safe, relationally safe. A sense of well-being means that children trust their environment. They will be playful and trust and become involved, and they will persist with difficulty. They communicate with confidence and express their points of view, and they listen. My very favourite is a sense of contribution with dispositions that see justice and fairness as pivotal values in a learning community, as learners take responsibility, collaborate, and show empathy for one another. Underpinning potentiating environments, then, are interesting, trustworthy, challenging, listening, and collaborative ones. So, in our teams, we have to think deeply about what these might look like, and our planning focus becomes designing environments for learning rather than activities. So, what is potentiating learning? This is a photo taken from the front deck of our home early in the morning, so the valley is filled with magical mist. I think learning is a lot like this too. We are offered a glimpse of what learning might be happening for our children. We cannot therefore be summative about the learning we see. We cannot say, this is the learning happening. For us in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Te Whāriki, our early learning curriculum, guides us in this and embraces formative assessment. The key feature of formative assessment is as a meaning-making activity. Learning is in motion, and our assessment processes ought to inform further learning, improving possibilities, not trying to prove them. Wherever teachers encounter summative assessments, we ought to push back because learning is complex and complicated and always on the move. The more we strengthen our relationships with our children and their families, the more we have insight into this learning child. This is one of the reasons we write learning stories for children we know well and offer these insights to our children and their families, strengthening learning further through feedback that enhances children's learning identities. And we write for all children in our settings. E hara taku toa, I te toa takitahi, e nari he toa takatini. I come not with my own strengths, but bring with me the gifts, talents, and strengths of my family, iwi, and ancestors. This makes all the difference. Sometimes teachers are given a list of children to write learning stories for. However, this cuts across the theoretical underpinnings of sociocultural assessment, which is personal, emotional, and requires multiple perspectives. That means many teachers' perspectives, children's views of themselves and their families' views too. All of these perspectives are woven into learning stories with authenticity because what we write, as Wendy Lee describes, becomes a trace of our professional lives. Children continue to look at their learning stories years later. So what we write matters. It can't be trite or hurried to make sure that a list is finished for the month. To illustrate, underneath this mist that you see in the photo is a much clearer view of Mawao, our mountain, Wairoa, the river, and the Māori ancestral marae, as well as its uapara, its Māori cemetery. I know this because I live there, yet you cannot see these in a surface glance at this photo. As we tease away the layers of learning and the learning stories we write, we are able to talk together, explain, widen the context, and better understand the impact of documented learning on children, families, and teachers, and therefore be able to answer those questions our children might be asking of us to ensure their agentic right to explore learning they value. The way we share this information with families is hugely important, ensuring we keep them abreast of both the mitigating factors that we deeply reflect on in terms of ensuring children's safety and the fun, the enormous joyous fun that comes from playing in ways that children crave and thrive on. We do this by having a family teacher who supports the transition for the family into our setting and stays with that family until the child attends school. We recognise that children do not come to us alone. They come with a wealth of lived experience. We have organised our centre as a family-focused one, and all of our children can choose where they wish to be at any given time. The doors for outside are open in rain and shine, and children have long periods of uninterrupted play in shared spaces where age is not a barrier to exploration. We think about how learning happens in our families and communities. It is with and alongside older and younger children, experienced and less experienced learners. Yet, in early learning settings, we silo children into age groups. Why did this become the model that so many of us has followed, or so many of us have followed? What about family groupings? Babies, toddlers, and young children together. Yet we rarely question that when a child turns a particular age, 1, 2, 3 perhaps, that they are shifted into a new space, away from the connections and relationships they have been invested in. Your very own Peter Moss is troubled about single story narratives. He says that transformative change comes from alternative narratives. The story of quality and high returns has abandoned its local roots. Forgotten, it is just another local tale, claiming instead to tell a universal truth as if its way of talking about things is natural, neutral, and necessary. In so doing, the story drowns out other stories about early childhood education, alternative ways of making meaning of the world, rendering them unimaginable and unspeakable, limiting what it is possible to think. It's a very, very big problem. So, when you encounter that, we must have other ways, other stories to tell. At Grierton, we track children's interests and consider ways to provide provocations to widen and deepen our engagements with these learning investigations. This means that we regularly go out into the community in search of meaningful experiences. And we invite families to come with us into these adventurous learning journeys. Very importantly, we start from the premise that learning ought to be irresistibly engaging. This is a family event at a local park where we set up a water slide 150 metres long. This was a Sunday afternoon, and many families came with us to Tanewainuku, our majestic ancient forest mountain, relatively close to our setting, about 20 minutes away, to see why their children are so enthusiastic to come with us to these extraordinary places. Back home, the learning happens in co-constructed ways as children and teachers figure out together ways to make sense of their experiences. This means teachers are courageously working at the edge and always thoughtful because teachers are invested in building a local curriculum designed to nurture learning identities. I think these kinds of learning settings are truly embedded in the principles and strands of Te Whāriki. I think too that our curriculum aspirations are essential for wholehearted, energetic, curious, social and cultural learners to thrive. Our centre philosophy has always encouraged healthy exploration and respect for outdoors, and we think regular excursions in nature is an essential way to foster and extend these ideas. Being out in open space, immersed in nature, supports unlimited new opportunities for children to learn. As a result, love of nature grows, and children learn to protect what they love. We have spent a considerable time setting up safety parameters. However, once that is done, we only have to add to it when we visit somewhere new. The next few slides are taken from the permission slips, and we also have specific risk, benefit, risk management details for each place we visit. We are only required to complete a risk management assessment. However, we think that a risk benefit analysis is equally as important. This makes the risks for not doing these excursions very clearly evident, and we set up a credit perspective rather than a deficit about all the things that could go wrong. We've been doing these excursions for the last 14 years and we have a lot of experience. When we have new teachers, we pair them with an experienced teacher. We continue to be watchful, but we also know our children and we have trust in them that they can risk assess as they engage in challenging experiences. I'll give you a few moments to read through the document on the next few slides. As you read through this document, you will see the word kaiako. This is the word used for teacher in New Zealand. Kai means to act in a sustaining way, and ako is the learning and teaching. We think this is a wonderful way to see the role of a teacher. So continue to read at your leisure. Although there it talks about holding hands while we're in a urban environment, within the forest, as long as children can see us and we can see them, we are happy for them to be exploring. I think you'll see that these are very detailed, but we become very familiar with them, and families do too, and so do children. And children are the ones who invite uh, others into our understanding of this. And they will say, when we're out in the forest, you can't pick and lick because that could be, unhealthy, and that you must stay so that you can see the orange high-vis vests of both teachers and children. But otherwise, there is a huge amount of unhurried learning by agentic uh, learners uh, that is designed and investigated and explored by children themselves. And teachers become involved when they're invited to be involved. Imagine, if you will, this learning scenario: a learning environment mindfully created with resilience, resourcefulness, challenge, social and cultural engagement foremost. I wonder what that picture um, conjures up for you. In my mind, I think it means a learning environment where children have agency to set learning goals for themselves and the time to experiment to find ways to achieve these goals. These are not environments for the faint hearted, because in these kinds of learning settings, teachers are fluidly responsive to children's initiatives and their working theories. Children act on their growing learning dispositions in many and varied ways, aimed at building an understanding of how children's worlds work, and they do this by generating a series of mini theories. These working theories can be thought of as ideas in motion. How wonderful to be a teacher in early learning settings, creating context for children's ideas to form, shift, and grow in partnership with families. Most importantly, we wish to be a community connected to the wider environment. This is why we made the decision that all work in our centre would happen in real time, space, effort, and that children would see experts in action. We must also go out into the community to follow things of interest to us. We share a lot of our writing with our families, and this is an excerpt inside our Forest Farm Adventures little booklet that we give to families. We've put a lot of effort and thought into how we organise the structure of these adventures, and we wish to offer this opportunity to every child. Continuity has always been an important part of our learning culture, and we make sure that this culture is supported at the farm forest too. For this reason, we would like children to have as many continuous opportunities to revisit the farm forest as possible, so that they can build on prior knowledge and return to their plans and research each week. They can also be in the same smaller team. We go as a group of 10 with 2 teachers, and we spend the whole day there from about 10 o'clock till about 2. By the time we get to wherever we're going and we get enough time to come home again. Uh, and these smaller groups sizes forge friendships. They forge camaraderie. They are just immensely wonderful to see how these relationships unfold inside these groups. We also write community stories because we want to give families a sense of how a day unfolds. And this next little bit is an excerpt from one of our adventures to Taniwainuku. Of course, play too was so prevalent, and the spontaneity of children's interactions could be characterized by a free-flowing social warmth, connection, and desire to support each other. Of aroha mai, aroha atu, that means love offered, love received. There was no single story, and while Waiata, a traditional Te Reo Māori song, continued in the background, other children became caught up in, for example, an age-old game of string, tied to a circle and placed over fingers. It seems that one child's curiosity has a way of tapping into other children's imaginations to become expansive investigations. What was clearly evident was a tuakana ability to empathically share their skill with Taina, older children supporting younger children. And it can go the other way too, because younger children can be more experienced at something. The essential part of this is the reciprocity, the giving and receiving of information and support and ways to do things that we might not otherwise think about because we're in a social group that care about each other. So tuakana bent down, adjusting their height to enable Taina to engage with the string more easily. Evident too was growth mindsets, because mistakes didn't matter. Tamariki, our children, simply tried again, problem solving with resilience and resourcefulness. And continuing with excerpts from community stories, our tamariki were deeply interested in rako, that's branches, lying on the ground. The way new life was growing there seemed to capture their curiosity, because we often heard tamariki musing about what it meant. For example, the rako to be covered with a blanket of moss. Though the tree had fallen down, it was giving life and renewal to Tinahiri, the forest. Our voices dropped as we continued our hikoi, our walk through Tinahiri, the forest. An almost whispered question of, "What is it?" from Tamariki was barely heard, and just as Whaereki, our teacher, had earlier commented that if we listened really hard and remained very still and quiet, manu, birds, might visit us, and we were gifted with just such a visit from a Toto Wai, a North Island robin. Now, this slow engagement with nature, not as a use commodity, but as a relational sharing and listening with other than human forms, generates a concern and love for the health and safety of our planet. In English, we might think of this as an eco-citizen. However, in New Zealand, we would much prefer to use the word kaitiakitanga, which means a guardian, and an emotional and spiritual connection to this world, to this natural world. This is a learning story for Piper about her adventures into a Tanewainuku forest. This is what it looks like in her learning story folder. These are the actual words. Curious children look and listen to the people, places, and things in their environment. They ask a lot of questions and have many ideas about how this world works. Piper, I could see just how much curiosity drives your learning. Piper, as we walk through a Tanewainuku today, I was struck by your curiosity to explore the many features this majestic forest has to offer us, if only we care to look. You certainly did, for at every turn I saw you investigating spider webs, leaves, sticks, and games with other children. You came up with a lot of theories too. As a particularly big spider's web was scrutinised, you told me, spiders make cobwebs in my house. They come and live in my house too, I replied. It seems that spiders had made a deep impression on you, and your fascination led to thinking about what they needed to live. Piper told me, you need to make a little bit of room, space for air, so they can breathe. This care for other creatures prompted me to look back into your learning stories folder, and there I found many stories about your kindness to others. I particularly liked the story that showed how you included children in your play. You said, I'm everyone's friend. I could see examples of this today as your friendliness led you into play with Archie Ray using wool for a finger string game as a pivot to turn around each other. So much fun. My thoughts on your learning. You have been able to come with us on our adventures with our older kura school friends into a Tanewainuku, and these days are filled with exploration. You've contributed so much in these explorations, and this tells me a great deal about your thirst to learn. Nothing phases you as you trudge through the mud, climb big hills, and fallen down trees, look into dark holes, or chat and play with friends. How does this kind of learning continue to grow? So, I think curiosity fueled with emotional and social competency are learning characteristics that you are constantly practicing. As you engage in the natural world, there continues to be many places and spaces that nurture your unhurried, deeply engaged learning, your inbuilt thirst to find out more with your kāko and friends alike. Aroha nui, Lorraine. Aroha nui is a word for big love. And teachers often sign off these learning stories with that kind of affectionate farewell. Play, how it shapes the brain, opens the imagination, and invigorates the soul. The promise of play. That first part is the title of a book by Stuart Brown. I so recommend reading it. I'll often read academic texts, only bits and pieces of them, to be honest, depending on what I'm interested in. But this is a book that I read from beginning to end. So much information on fabulous snake content of or context of what it means to play in unhurried, unfettered, unscheduled ways. And by doing this, children have opportunities to explore in ways that adults could never figure out ahead of time for them. Simply because we don't have that kind of imagination, we don't connect in the same way that children do. After all, childhood is a period of exploration where um, this unfettered um, thinking brain can build the brain for a lifetime. So play is the vehicle for that. Several years ago, the theme for the ACERA conference, the European Early Childhood Research Association conference, uh, held in Portugal had this as their focus. And in describing it, the idea of curiosity further, Chris Pascal and Tony Bertram said, curiosity encourages unpredictability, challenges the boundaries of the status quo, asks odd questions, has hunches, is sometimes doubtful, enjoys serendipity and surprise, and requires an active rather than a passive mind in which the individual's agency and participation is centrally placed. So imagine that as we overlay those notions into our play settings and offer children opportunities where some might consider risky and yet others would consider unpredictability, challenges, challenging the boundaries of the status quo, asking odd questions, having hunches. Now, if we're going to enable children to do that, of course, we're not going to help them into a space where they haven't got there themselves. So, if you're going to climb a tree, you've got to figure out how to do it. And if someone's not lifting you up into that space at a time where your body is not um, it doesn't know itself in time and space, and it hasn't got the muscle strength to achieve that independently. That is asking for trouble, quite frankly. But if you encourage children through those feelings of frustration that will inevitably happen because they see others easily able to climb, and you say to them, perhaps you could ask your friend how they did this, how they managed to do it. And because we use the language of learning, the language of resilience and resourcefulness and reflection all the time within our conversations with children, a child will say, I had to practice. I found it tricky at first, but I kept practicing and then I could do it. And maybe they'll also offer some ideas too. I put my foot here and I put my hand there, and that helped me. And in that way, we're building this camaraderie and this thoughtful, empathic, empathic way of relating to others, which this world so sorely needs. Curiosity, then, allows an individual to explore unfamiliar circumstances and through this exploration to experience discovery and joy. All important for well-being. Curiosity questions the safe and secure, the rigid and formulaic, the timid and the bored. It is central to science, exploration, and adventure, and often we see it underpinning the artistic uniqueness of creativity. So when we're challenged with the notion of engaging in our settings with risky play opportunities, we can point to this, that unless we do this, we have such a safe environment that children don't stretch these learning muscles. When they become teenagers and they go out into the big wide world, they're going to stretch them then. However, they won't have had all the practice for years and years of thinking about what it means to engage safely in risky play. Where will I put my foot? What happens if I do this? Will I do this just because somebody tells me to? Or will I think it through for myself? I know my own strengths? Who am I as a learner? Do I watch and listen first and then become engaged? Or do I jump right in and then perhaps end in calamity? So there's so much to consider as teachers when we're setting up our environments for curiosity, because that is the wellspring um, determining whether children will engage in risky play or not. Not all risky play is about physical exploration. Emotional risk is a very big part of engaging and learning. If I do this, will I still be Jackson's friend? What will my friends think of me if I make a mistake? So sometimes learning that seems quiet and safe may indeed feel very risky for some children. It is how we feel about learning that enables us to stretch further or not. Lucy is a very thoughtful learner. an inspiration to others. And I think because both at home and with us, she has had many opportunities to find herself, to follow her bliss, as it were. And now, in her last year before starting school at around 5, we can see how her confident, competent self will succeed in the new environment that school will offer. John Holt's fabulous quote: if we take from someone his right to decide what to be curious about, we destroy his freedom of thought. We say, in effect, you must think not about what interests and concerns you, but about what interests and concerns us. It's a very salient comment for the way we engage as teachers with children. One of the key aspirations of Te Whāriki, our curriculum, is that children have agency to decide for themselves what they will learn, who they will learn with, and where they will learn it. This kind of learning is located. We think it comes from our children's homes and from our centre, where social learning that is steeped in meaning, interest, passion, and spirit and culture happens moment by precious moment. And it is about whole learning, the title of a book, or Whole Learning, the title of a book by David Perkins in 2009, but still worth reading it. And I think that the idea that you focus on the whole rather than the individual parts, you look at this apple, for example, and if you isolated that tiny slither, and we could relate that to skill and knowledge, that is less meaningful than seeing the whole apple and then coming back and slicing and dicing to get the skills. So that children, in fact, say, this has meaning to me. I am motivated. I want to learn. I love that it is hard and takes a long time, and I'm working with friends. Do you know what, Lucy?
Yeah.
This morning, cutting that material would have been, you needed to ask somebody to help you, and now look, you've practiced, you've figured it out, you've learned how to do it, and now you can do it all by yourself.
I need no help.
You don't need any help anymore.
Because my mom doesn't know I don't need any help.
Well, you'll be able to show her now, won't you? And you'll be able to take this back to her, give her your present, and you can tell her, I cut this out all by myself. Yes. I didn't give up. I kept practicing, and now I can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to see the book.
Okay, just a second. Now here's Lucy, a little older, out in the forest. What could so capture her attention that she would be so intensely focused? She looked at me and said, do you know what we are making? Houses for little insects. The learning story that I wrote for her was called Lucy, Eco-Architect, Artist and Storyteller. And the photo that you see here, where she's got her nose pressed to the grass and her hand in her gumboots, shows another way that she's connected to Papa Tuanuku, Te Ao Māori word for Mother Earth, and her deep desire to collect taonga, that's treasures, that she finds in nature. When there is not a treasure bag to hand, gumboots will do just as well. This was the first photo of your insect house and represents a long commitment to make it into the finest whare house, perfect for a wandering insect to find. You told me that you wouldn't catch one because an insect would find this house. I wanted to show a series of photos rather than just the finished one because each step shows your thinking about what insects need. This was a functional house as well as an aesthetically beautiful one, made with thought and care. Functionality because there were dark spaces to hide, and beautiful because of the gardens you constructed around it. Some thoughts on your learning, Lucy. As Tanya and I stood watching your mahi work unfold, we shared our thoughts because we recognised the magic of what you were doing. We all learn differently, and we love that. However, what we saw both today was a continuation of many other events, a little like this. This tells us that the learning characteristics that you provide that provide your motivation to search for new learning opportunities are broad, deep, and rich. We've known you for a long time, and we certainly know that the experiences in Tēnā Here, the bush, are ones that feed your artistic storytelling and caring soul. What we see here too is a growing knowledge of the science of looking after creatures, as well as an empathy for them. We also see your continuing willingness to enable others to contribute, and your old friends from Greerton, as well as your new friends from Kura, were all welcome to add to this insect whare and garden. These experiences seem to consume you for such long time periods as your concentration is finely tuned into your intentional artistry. Lucy, how might we all stretch your learning further? There is a reason why this whakatoki, that's a Māori proverb, is written on the side of the Greerton van. That's our van that gets us around to all of these amazing places. Ko o te whenua ko o. I am the land and the land is me. We value what it means for us. We do not own the land or the creatures that live there. They are not our possessions to cling to and do as we wish with. Today, your intention to not look for the living insects, but to think they would find your house in their own way and time, was such a revealing comment for your thinking about this earth. We treasure what we love, and our adventures into Te Tao, the natural world, have given you many opportunities to live and to learn to love the gifts of Papa Tuanuku, our Mother Earth. You drive your own learning, Lucy, and the gifts you offer others are about modelling your great love for all living creatures. Aroha nui, Lorraine. Margaret Carr and Guy Claxton view dispositions as verbs rather than nouns. Learning is something that we do, not acquire, as Freire talks about a banking model where we accumulate knowledge and skill. Dispositions where we keep practicing keep us stretching those dispositions, and through that we do get better at skills and knowledge. It's not either or, but it's the way we go about it which comes first. And if we give that sliced apple as a skill for children, today the letter is A, the number is 3, when it's not meaningful. I'm not 3, I'm 5. I already know about 3. We have to see this from children's perspectives. And when we tap into their intense motivation to learn, these dispositions just flourish. So Professor Margaret and Professor Guy, they suggest that it is the role of early childhood settings to strengthen valued learning responses and actions along 3 dimensions, including their frequency and robustness, widening their modus operandi, that I do this here, but I do it there as well. I can take my dispositions with me, unlike maybe skills I can't, and deepening their complexity and competence. So as we view a child's learning, and perhaps write about this in learning stories, do we see positive learning dispositions becoming more frequent, just as this learning story depicts for Lucy? Do we see this learning occurring in ever more varied places, times, and is this growing in complexity and richness? We began this webinar with the thought that risky play is an invitation into adventure. The kind that makes children's tummies flutter, and the kind that offers challenge that is in learners' successes, shows just how resilient and resourceful they truly are. Risky play offers opportunities for learners to overcome frustration, work collaboratively, and in action-oriented ways progress their confidence and competence. Risky play, or safe play for that matter, safe scripted programs, both affect children's views of themselves as lifelong learners. When we enable children to have the time, freedom, and space to take on risky, challenging provocations in our environments, we don't know how the outcomes. However, I hope tonight that you have seen how thrilling, often surprising and uncertain adventurous play provides children with an avenue to test ideas, reflect, assess, and try again, to be reflective, to make mistakes and bounce back with resilience, to struggle through difficulty and to problem solve, thereby strengthening their resourcefulness, and to grow a deep sense of camaraderie in the face of challenge, and thus build relational reciprocity, where working as a team and caring deeply for each other matters to children, and as does the flora and fauna and the health of our planet. So risky play can't stay in our settings. It must go into the natural world too, where nothing has a straight line or one way to achieve a self-set goal, where we can shift a use-value relationship that has got our planet into this mess that it currently is in, into one where we protect the living and the non-living world, because we have learned to love our earth, skies, rivers, and oceans. When we embrace this kind of learning, make it visible, and draw our communities in, we are indeed enabling children to become lifelong learners, able to face the challenges of a future yet to be determined, and perhaps, in some small way, be a stepping stone for resilient, resourceful, community-focused people to make a difference now and into this future world. I extend greetings from New Zealand once again, and say farewell. And I wish you, well, what do I wish you? I hope that you will really look carefully at your settings and think how you can help to stretch the risky opportunities both within your setting and beyond, so that children can feel that sense that you know them, that you listen to them, that you let them fly, and that you are fair in terms of the things that matter to them most. So, ngā mihi nui, Lorraine Sands.